This is Professor Needing. Welcome back to another thrilling Math 068 section, and this one is going to be fractions, section number 2. So, when we left last time, we were utilizing our graphing calculator for a number of different things, and we're going to continue that same thing. At the same time, while learning a couple of things about the fraction itself. So, a fraction basically designates itself into the complexity of comparing two different things, a part in comparison with a whole value. And when we discuss a part and a whole, what we're really talking about is we're talking about a numerator and a denominator. For example, if you're on page 9 of your handout, and it says that a fraction is in the form of a numerator over a denominator, and it gives an example of a pizza. For some reason in this world, we love to use a pizza to talk about a fraction. If we have 1/2, we have 1 out of 2 values, or 1 out of 2 whole things. Again, part and whole. The part is 1 numerator. The whole is 2 denominator. In the second example, we have 1 part out of 4 available things. You can see there's 1 slice of pizza, and it would have been cut into 4 even chunks. The designation, or the parsing into different pieces, is the denominator always. The amount that you actually have applicable to you is the numerator. In the last one, it's 3 out of 8 because there's 3 pieces out of 8 equal slices, so therefore 3/8. Numerator 3, denominator 8. Now, all of these fractions that we have right now are referred to as proper fractions because a proper fraction, the numerator is smaller than the denominator. It does say that the denominator says how many equal slices we have in the whole pizza is cut into, and that's what it designated that into. Fraction can also be written as a decimal or a percent, it says. So to convert a fraction to a decimal, we divide the numerator by the denominator. So we'll do a little bit of work here, and we'll go through a couple of these. So for example, and clear away what we had from last time we were here. Let's do this a couple ways. Let's say that we want to take 3/8, and we actually just want a decimal flat out. So what we learned last time was we learned an alpha function in order to get to a fraction, or an alpha y equal to get to the fraction menu. Now we're just going to simply go right to a decimal. 3 division sign 8 says I don't want a fraction. What I really want is I want a decimal. And I get 0.375. Again, doing the division on any calculator will just simply give us that. On page 10 of your worksheet, it tells you to take 3 and divide it by 15 for an example. It says that'll be 0.2, or 2/10 of a value. Now, when you do division, it's pretty straightforward. If you want a fraction, you maintain the fraction with the alpha key. So if I wanted was 3/15, then I would have used the fraction template and got 3/15, and the calculator would have kept it like that for me. Notice it also reduced for that particular one I just entered for myself. This is where you, as the student, would do student exercises number 1. You'll fill all these out, and remember, this is part of your upload process that you're going to do at the end of chapter number 3. Converting a fraction to a percentage. So when you make something a fraction to a percent, what you really do is you do a shift 2 positions to the right-hand side of a decimal. And what do I mean by that? Well, here's my algebraist coming out to me. But let's say that I had 1.27, and I wanted to convert that into a percentage. Well, what I'm really doing is I'm multiplying times 100, and I'm adding a percent symbol. And when you multiply a decimal by a percent, you move it 2 to the right. So this is 127%. You can make yourself feel good about that. You know that 0.5 is the same as 50%, 1/2. So if I did this multiplication times 100%, then 2 shifts to the right would indicate that I should have 50%, and we know that's to be true. So anytime we have a decimal, we move to the right 2 positions. Moving to the right 2 positions is the same as multiplication times 100. So if we took a calculator and we said, hey, I have a decimal of 0.27896, just something random, but I want it to be a percentage. Well, if I want it to be a percentage, I'm going to hit times 100, which is the same thing as shifting the decimal 2 to the right, and this would become 27.896%. Now, the calculator doesn't see it as that. It only sees it as we told it to multiply by 100. So in any example of changing, oops, sorry, I'm jumping all over the place. In any example of changing, if we wanted to take, say, 3/15, well, we would do exactly the same thing. So we would take 3/15, and let me clear some stuff. Again, 3/15, 3 divided by 15. That's 0.2, but if you want the percentage of that, it's times 100, which means 2 shifts to the right, which means 20%. Pretty easy, right? Again, student exercises, there you go. Convert these and write them as a percentage. It says the graphing calculator can be used to turn a decimal into a fraction. Okay, well, here's the directions, but I'm going to actually do it for you. So here we go. Let's say that I have a decimal. Let's say I have, and I'm just make one up and then we'll change it. Take one we know, 0.75. We know that's 3/4. Okay, so if I hit enter, and let's just say I was working on that and boom, I got that answer for something I was doing. Well, I want to convert this. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to, there's two places to do this. I'll show you both. One, alpha y equal. You've already been here. If you look at number 4 says fraction to decimal, FD or DF. It'll go either direction. Hit number 4. So it's saying, I'm going to take your fraction and turn it into a decimal, or I'm going to take your decimal and turn it into a fraction. Hit enter. Got to hit enter, and boom, 3/4. There's another place to do that. Let's say that I just simply enter a decimal. Let's say I enter 0.275, and I automatically know I want this decimal to be a fraction. Well, I can go back to where I was, or I can go to the math button, which I kind of like. And the math button has two choices. Number 1 says make me a fraction. Number 2 says make me a decimal. Well, I already have a decimal, so I'm going to say make it as a fraction. I'm going to hit enter, and it automatically makes 11/40. Again, the two places I did that was alpha y equal or the math function directly. Both of them do exactly the same thing. So try those in your student selection. We'll do this one right here as the last one. Decimal 0.6 is 3/5. Well, let's try 0.6 like we were given. Let's put in 0.6. Let's ask for it as a fraction. Number 1. Let's hit enter, and 3/5 is our solution. It says the graphing calculator is being used to add or subtract fractions. And again, here's the function alpha y equal that I showed you in order to get to fractions. The template, if you will. So we want to take 3/5 and we want to add it to 4/7. Pretty straightforward. So we're going to, again, I'm going to shortcut it, alpha x, if you have that function. If not, alpha y equal. 3/5 is my value. Now, notice my cursor's at the bottom. I have to make sure that I scoot over before I attempt to make that addition or that subtraction value. Again, I'll show that. When you're entering the 5, notice the cursor is in the bottom of the fraction. Until you scoot over, you're not going to be able to actually add. Because look, if I hit a plus sign right here, it's in the bottom. I don't want that. I got to delete that 5. I got to scoot over. Now I hit my plus sign. Now I go with another fraction. And now I think it was 4/7 is what it was. And I can hit enter at any time. And I get 41/35. For some reason, I needed this to be a decimal. If I needed it, which I don't, I would hit math. I would hit number 2. I would tell it, hey, I want a decimal, and it would convert it to a decimal. If I wanted to change it to a percentage right now, I would hit times 100, and I would have approximately 117.14%. Lots of cool functions with my calculator. Student exercises number 4 are for you. in section here, we're doing a little multiplication. Your calculator uses a little asterisk for multiplication. I kind of wish it used a big dot or something like that. But let's say 3/5 times 4/7. So again, here we go. We're going to take fraction friendly 3/5. Again, scoot over. Times sign, notice that little asterisk thing. Alpha y equal, I'm going to do 4/7. Again, I think that's what it was. 4/7, and I get 12/35. Now, I do want to show you one quick thing, that an asterisk is the same as a parenthesis, because remember, in algebra, parenthesis means multiplication. So I'm going to do this one more time. Actually, I'm going to do this. Remember, I'm going to go. Now, watch this. I cleared everything. It's like, oh, it's gone. I didn't want it to be gone. Hit the arrow up key, and you'll notice you can go up into history. So I'm going to grab that thing, and I'm going to show you that a parenthesis will do the same thing. So I'm going to insert a parenthesis around the 4/7, and notice I got to be around the entire 4/7. And I'm going to show you that it's exactly the same thing. Again, if I want this to be a decimal, remember the steps, say it. I can almost hear you. Math, number 2, there's my decimal, times 100, and there's my percentage. Student exercise number 5, I will leave for you. It says the graphing calculator can simplify fractions. We already saw this happen once. If we put in 12/24 into a fraction state, so get yourself a template, enter 12/24. We know that's going to be 1/2, and the calculator will reduce fractions for us. If you enter an improper fraction, so let's say you put in 48 over, let's go with 36, because definitely reduces. And I hit enter. Notice I still get an improper, or I get an improper, but it's still reduced. The calculator will reduce whether it be proper or improper. What it will not do is change this into a mixed number, which is a great thing, because mixed numbers are really, really inefficient, and we don't like to use them other than to explain things. So for me, every fraction you ever give me should be reduced, and unless otherwise stated, it could be left as an improper fraction. I know that goes against everything you've ever learned when you were in middle school or high school, and all they did was preach everything had to be a mixed number. They kind of weren't thinking to what was going to happen at the collegial level. I tell you what, I'll do one of these for you just so you can see how all of this goes, and then that'll be the end of this particular section. So I will do letter A with you. So let's enter letter A. Let's clear out here. So first of all, we want a -9. So we have to start with a -9. Then we want to add something to that. And what we want to add is this large fraction. So we're going to get a fraction template. And in the numerator, we're going to put 9 plus 20. The calculator will do the mathematics for me in the numerator of this fraction. In the denominator, I want 3 times 5. Notice they use the parenthesis for times 5. Notice I'm still in the cursor in the bottom, but I got to scoot over to the right, so now I can subtract 3. That's not -3, that's -3. You have to make sure you're using it right. Notice the 9 is a negative because it's a -9, but the 3 is a subtraction because it's in between two numbers. Hit the buttons, make it happen. -151/15. Completely improper, completely beautiful, and completely reduced. That'll be all for chapter 2. I'll see you again when we hit chapter 3 for rounding.